Hi, I'm Olivia, a stroke survivor and member of Bind.
And I'm Kezia, a stroke survivor and member of Bind as well. And today is going to be a totally different episode. I'm super excited about it. You are not going to be hearing a specific guest, okay, guys? You're going to have a great conversation with me and Olivia about our experiences of having a stroke as a young ones. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to call each other for.
Yeah, young stroke survivors. Yeah.
Young stroke survivors and our experiences to our recovery and who we are today. So I'm super excited, but you keep hearing about me. So today you guys are going to be hearing more about Olivia. So yeah, go ahead, Olivia. Tell us about you.
Yeah. So, where do I begin? I'll kind of start with kind of the fact that my stroke happened on July 1st, 2021. I was 2 days shy of my 38th birthday. And interestingly enough, I was actually coming out of a networking event. I actually helped a dear friend. So I was supporting her for this networking event she was leading. And I remember during the event, I was sort of feeling a little bit off. My partner, my now fiance, was, he brought me home. I laid down and all of a sudden, the stroke just kind of happened. And it was very odd. It was a really weird experience. It was somewhat out of body in a number of ways. I found myself watching myself floating above, but I was still in my body. It was just such a surreal experience. And, my partner was kind of he was talking to me and I just couldn't respond. I didn't know exactly what was going on. Of course, I knew that it was a strange experience for sure. And this was at nighttime. So this was on the night of July 1st. I kind of snapped out of it in some weird way. I don't know exactly what or how or why this happened and how it manifested. But long story short, I did fall asleep. And part of it is, I just didn't have the awareness. I didn't know that I could have had a stroke. And so when I woke up the following morning, my fiance had left for work and I couldn't use my phone. I didn't know how to use it. And I don't know if you know, but with, the iPhone, you've got, kind of the tactile slides and things like that. So this was, post the button, right? I didn't have the button anymore. So I had the screen that basically had, the slide. So long story short is my mother was calling and I couldn't figure out how to use my phone. And so she was calling and calling and calling and I just didn't know what to do. So I was pressing buttons on the side and I just kind of gave up. I kept trying because she just kept calling and obviously she knew, mother's instinct, something was really wrong. So I kind of just left it and I was really slow that morning. I was really tired, really, really tired. Couldn't wake up. After and again, you don't even realize this when this is kind of happening, especially after having fallen asleep. That's kind of the cardinal sin when you have a stroke is falling asleep. So I kind of tried to go about my day. I tried to make coffee, right? Which is the thing that, I did every morning. Didn't know how to use my coffee maker, had no idea, did not know what on earth I knew what it was, but I just didn't know what to do about it. And that's when I was kind of this is really weird, because it's it was just so surreal and so bizarre. I remember it being such a bright day too, so bright. And so, long story short, after I realized that, I kind of sat down because I just didn't really know what to do. Finally, my mother got in touch, and my speech was really impaired. And so I was only able to respond in, just like one word, 2 words. And then she called my partner, and then he came home, and we went to the hospital. And so that was on the 2nd of July. When I went to the hospital, because my speech was impaired, and I didn't know how to tell a story. I didn't know how to talk in a way that was meaningful. I remember being in the hospital, and my partner being with me, and there were all these doctors and residents, I think, that kept coming in and out and asking me what happened. And I was like, I was at a networking event, like, I don't know, and it was clear that I was impaired. But ultimately, after, about several, I don't even know, I don't remember how many people came in. The ultimate decision maker was the doctor on call that basically sent me home. And so when I didn't receive that care, I just kind of was like, well, okay, I guess I'm fine,
Yeah.
And so my birthday came and went, don't remember it. That was the next day. I remember sitting, and for like the next 5 years, I was sitting just like on my couch. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to move. I didn't know where to go. But I remember being so blissfully unaware, like in this like nirvana almost of like, things are happening, but I don't know what's really happening.
Oh, yeah.
And so long story short, after about 5 days, I told my partner, I was like, I think I have to go back to the hospital because nothing's improving and I don't know what's going on. And so we went back to the hospital. That was on the 7th. So 6 days after my stroke, I was admitted, and they found that I had the stroke through an MRI. And so the story is such that it's heartbreaking in a number of ways, because had I received the care, and I don't know exactly the what and the why, I can't really express why those things happened when they did and why I was sort of turned away. I think a lot of it does have to do with the fact that I was young. I think that we were in the midst of a pandemic. I think that there were a lot of kind of resources that were just overutilized. I think there were a lot of things that were happening at that moment that kind of contributed to this experience. And so, after I was, it was obvious, again, that I was, my speech was impaired, and then they put me, they basically put me right into speech therapy. But, 6 weeks of speech therapy is not nearly enough when you're rebuilding neural pathways, when you're, when nobody really knows why this happened, nobody really knows. And we have our suspicions, but I'm not going to go into that right now.
It's a whole other question.
It is. And so, right now, my speech is obviously improved. I think one of the things that I've really struggled with in my recovery has been structuring thoughts, structuring stories, like being able to talk, to be able to like share my story. I think, when Kezia, you and I, started working together in June of last year, I couldn't verbalize my story in a way that was meaningful because I didn't know if I wanted to.
Yeah. And I actually wanted to point that out to you too. Like, huge thanks. Like, honestly, I think I'm super blessed, and I hope all our viewers also feel blessed that you are sharing your story, because I did try to share your story and also for me to learn a little bit more about yourself. But then I remember, like, it takes some time to have the courage to share what you had to go through, right? And I think that's something that's so new and so different for each individual that has some kind of brain injury and even a stroke, right? Like right now it's February, but March is coming soon, pretty soon, and about all the different types of brain injuries and how they happen, and did you even know that was happening to you? Like, it's just so much to learn about. So I did want to like thank you so much for sharing it, because a lot of it I didn't even hear about it before, and you're sharing that to a wider, like, audience. So thank you so much about that.
And I think that's something that, we've talked about offline, right? As this level of invisible disability that kind of comes with, cognitive issues, and the things that kind of come when you're trying to get back to reality life, whatever you want to call it, right? And so, I remember 6 months after my stroke, I got the opportunity of a lifetime for this job, because my resume was up to date, and obviously I have, my life prior to the stroke was wonderful, storied in so many ways, and I'm so grateful that I got to live that first part of my life, those first 38 years, really. I did a lot, and I had incredible kind of experiences career-wise. I had incredible experience. I traveled everywhere. I mean, I did wonderful things, and I'm so grateful. But like, when it comes to, trying to get back what you think we had, it just takes it's a different beast, and it's not a bad beast. It's just a different beast. It's something that is hard, but it shows us like how tenacious we can be, how resourceful we can be. And you're constantly, with all of these adversities that we face with our own invisible disabilities, where we look fine, but and everybody kind of thinks, oh well, you look recovered, you look fine, whatever.
I would have never known that you had a stroke.
I would have never known. But like, guess what? 6 months ago, when we were sitting here for the first time, it was clear that was still something a little bit funny and a little bit different. And so there's a lot to be said about the things that we keep with us after this kind of an experience, right? What were some of the things that you remember about yourself in your former life, about what you were and where you are now?
I mean, I lived in Chicago. Like, I had never even stepped a foot in Texas, or maybe that's a lie. Maybe when I was like 2 years old, I went to Austin. I don't remember. I saw a video. I saw a video about it. But yeah, I lived in Chicago. I traveled a lot. I also ran for fun. And
You ran for fun.
I did. Actually, I ran to de-stress, decompress, if that's a still word, right? I was really active. And I feel like once I had the stroke, I don't remember a whole month of my life. So like I said, even though we had a stroke at an earlier age, we had a whole different experience. But the first thing that I wanted to do, and I couldn't even take 10 steps, is run a marathon. And I registered. And it's like, why did I do that? I couldn't accept the fact that I was going to have to do recovery for years, not a couple months, years, to be able to walk again, right? Or run again. So it's so different to like lose who you were, right? I worked, I had a very good social life. I still have, but it's different. But I had like a whole network, a whole village of people that I loved, that loved me, that, lived walking steps from me, that supported me in everything, whether they want to wake up at 5 a.m. to run with me, or they want to stay out till 5 a.m. and go out with me, right? Like, I had a whole different life, and I loved it. There's nothing that I didn't like about it. I lived a healthy life in Chicago. I lived a crazy life in Chicago, like, you know, everything. And I loved it. And having the stroke, yeah, I had to basically rewire who I am, right? And it was very difficult. And I wasn't, at a moment, I wasn't even accepting it. Like, I was like, nah, I'm going to run a marathon again in a couple months. It's March and I'm going to do it in October. Like, you know.
And that's actually a really good point, because that's one of the things that I think this kind of brings up a bigger point, which is, you know, there's this, it's not an awareness thing. It's just this is what I used to do, so I'm just going to go back to it. Right. You know what I mean? And it's like, duh, obviously. And I'll do it in like no time, because, you know, I'm fine. Like, I've got what I need. 2.5 years later, you know, I'm still trying to figure out like what, you know, where my gaps are, right? Even from an interviewing perspective, right? Like, how do I tell a story in a way that's impactful? How do I tell a story that, you know, where people will want to listen, you know, where, you know, they'll, and also, what do I want to share and what do I not want to share, right? Yeah. Like, that's the other thing too, is that it's so challenging when and especially if you're dealing with specific types of, you know, I guess, symptoms following your brain injury. You know, one of the things that I really struggle with is executive dysfunction and, you know, and concentration. Those are really my big ones, and PTSD. You know, those are the things that just come, right, when you have a traumatic experience, but also when your brain has been rejiggered, right? Yeah. And so, and the fact is that we're constantly trying to rebuild those things, right? Like, we're trying to, like, you know, whereas that, and I hate to say it this way because this may be somewhat triggering, but like, where that part of my brain died, there are other parts of my brain that like want to do something different in that part of the that area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I definitely understand you. And I think that like right now you were talking about, what do I share and who do I share to? And I think right now with our conversation, it's like easy to talk to one another, right? And it's easier to talk to a doctor or a therapist, or maybe even to the audience, right? Because if they're listening to us, it's for a reason. But oh my goodness, is it hard to like talk to our mother, who it might be easy to talk to, or our friends? It should be, but they knew who we were before. And how do I explain like what I don't want to talk about and why I don't want to talk about it, right? Like, I don't want to explain that today is just not a good day. Why is it not a good day? I have no idea why it's not a good day. Yeah. But I just woke up like this. and it's so hard to explain. Like, well, you should be happy because life goes on. Like, yes, I should be. And I am very thankful and very grateful. But today I just woke up in not a good mood. Like something must have happened during my sleep, right? And it's so hard to explain it, you know, without seeing some negativity. And it's hard to have those conversations with people that you love and that knew you before your accident or your experience, so the stroke, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's so difficult. But I did also want to know more about like how you are here today, right? Like, how did you hear from us? And in all honesty, like knowing your experience, like I said, it's completely different. I just got placed in Texas because I had to, right? But you didn't. I mean, you had a whole life before Texas. And how did you get here? And how did you hear about Bind? And who are you today?
Those are really good questions. So I'll give you a little bit more about kind of what happened following stroke, and then I'll allude to, you know, why I'm here now. Following my stroke, I had speech, and then but I realized that I was deficient in a number of ways, but I couldn't figure out how to address those things, those needs, et cetera. So basically, this started my journey, which was like taking what I already knew about myself and like double, triple, quadrupling down. One of the things that I've always really thought about or have known about myself is that I'm very tenacious, and I generally am very resourceful. So on this journey, I started to, look at where what I needed. And so when I decided that I wanted to basically do something different, when I wanted to like find figure out what I wanted to do from a career perspective, I started learning, I started doing. And mind you, this was like, a few months after stroke, like I couldn't absorb anything. I mean, it was impossible. But here I was, like on Udemy and all these like courses, and being like, oh, I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to do this. I need to help others. I need to do all this stuff. And that is something that just generally really resonates with me and has always resonated with me, is trying to help others. And I was like, how do I take this experience and help others with this? Because this sucks. And so long story short, that's kind of how it all started. But part of it was I didn't have the resources. I moved to, before my stroke, about years before, I moved to the magical land of enchantment, New Mexico, which I absolutely love. I love New Mexico so much, and I miss it. But I was living in Santa Fe and just didn't have the resources for somebody like me, who, had a stroke. And again, during COVID, when, people were kind of largely going between different places, like whether they were, working, not working, etc. And so I had to do it all myself. Some of the things that I did were, again, constant coursework, trying to absorb, trying to do coaching, nonviolent communication, trying to do, trying to figure out. And I was so angry during this time because I couldn't absorb things. So like, in these courses, I'd be I'd be working out, and I'd be so angry, and I didn't know why I was so angry. And a lot of it is, I think, the attention deficit that I have is I need to constantly focus all the time. Yeah. And so like, that's been the challenge overall. And so long story short, I did that. Some of the things that I did, again, because I didn't have the resources, were I took a Shakespeare monologue class. Oh my goodness. Which was impossible for somebody with aphasia. It's so hard, or one of, obviously everybody has varying experiences, but thank God for that, thank goodness for my improv class, and, all of those things that helped with mental flexibility. And so when I started to like actually dig into the support groups, because I was really in a bad place, BIA New Mexico came along, and then I started attending James's support group for New Mexico, who also happens to lead a support group in DFW. And he's the one that told me about Bind. And so that's kind of how and long story short, we were also moving at the time. And so to Dallas. So it just was a perfect, synchronistic kind of series of events. And so that's where I'm here. That's why I'm here now. It's been, wonderful and great. And it's been a huge challenge for my mental flexibility and my, the things that I'm working on constantly. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I honestly, I feel like you and I can talk forever on here. Yeah. Right. But I think that we talked about a lot of the things that are very important for us to be sharing with our listeners, with members that are here at Bind as well. And for people really, I think the most that I have learned from you, actually, and I think everyone hopefully has learned from you as well during this episode, is how resourceful you are. And you've done a lot of the step-by-steps by yourself. And I think that a lot of people that don't look the way that people think that people with brain injuries are supposed to look, You need to have physical therapy to get better. You need, like, at some point, we do need to challenge ourselves because it doesn't look what it needs to be to receive the help that we're supposed to, right? Who's going to tell us to get back into to working, right, into your experience, or who's going to reach your expectations? And really, there's no one else other than us, right? So I hope that that's what everyone and our listeners are learning. So I want to thank you for giving your time to be here as a guest. Actually, not even as a guest, as my friend, and who we can talk together and, give some opportunity to share experiences.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And thanks to our listeners for sticking with us every Thursday. Make sure to look us up on YouTube, on Instagram, on Spotify, all of your favorite platforms. Every Thursday, you'll see us here. So until next time.
Until next time.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Bindwaves and continue to support Bind and our nonprofit mission.
We support brain injury survivors as they reconnect into the life, the community, and their workplace.
And we couldn't do that without great listeners like you. We appreciate each and every one of you. Continue watching. Until next time.
Until next time.